Thank you again for staying with us. It's sunrise. And, oh, by the way, you didn't ask for the date today. Today is October 14, just to remind someone. It was World Mental Health Day on October 10. It was Tuesday this week. And I felt very compelled to draw attention to it because of the issues that we've been discussing here on Sunrise. So this morning we want to talk about mental health in families, and mental health, of course, we should know, is vital to the way families function. Now, the family environment can play a crucial role in creating positive mental health for each member of the family, especially children. So let's talk about mental health in families with Chris Aboje, who is a clinical psychologist. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
I believe clinical psychologist is not the only thing you are.
Oh, yes.
What coach are you?
Well, so I'm a wellness coach as well.
Wellness
coach, yes.
So, I knew there was coach somewhere.
Mental health in families. You know, generally we talk about, for young people, for men, for women, and all those things. But in families, first of all, how serious is it? And what are the, should I say, triggers of unwellness in the mental health of families?
Okay, so I'll say that families play a significant role in developing the way we cope with life. And when you think about mental health, I like to define it, and we say that it's the person's ability to actualize their potential. That means be the best that they can be, their ability to manage stress, normal stress, their ability to be productive and to contribute meaningfully. And when I then said earlier that the family plays a significant role in determining how you cope with these things, how you cope with stress, how you respond to life, the skills that you pick up, the family plays a significant role, which means that if the family, is dysfunctional, for example, it would affect the kind of skills that the child or the individual within the family framework picks up, and then would affect their ability to cope with, normal stresses and mental health challenges as well. So yes, families play a significant role, and in terms of severity, we are not able to, or how common it is, we are not able to measure it in terms of, if you come from a certain family, then you have mental illness. No, it's not cut out that way. But we say that, yes, families play a significant role because families determine how you respond. And also, families also determine the kind of traumatic life experiences that you are exposed to as well. So if, like I talk about dysfunctional homes, studies have constantly shown how children who come from dysfunctional homes are more predisposed to mental health illnesses, mental health concerns, and even substance abuse as well, because they are looking for a way to cope, and so they turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms as well.
Chris, slow down. You keep saying dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Please underline it and tell us what a dysfunctional family looks like.
Okay, so a dysfunctional family would include things like a family filled with conflicts. Mommy and daddy are always fighting, Now, it's okay for there to be conflict or quarrels within couples or within the family. But the most important thing is that you are able to resolve those conflicts, and the kids are able to observe you resolving the conflict. However, if this conflict is backed up by physical abuse, for example, emotional abuse, for example, then the child is picking up that. And that is unhealthy, and that could lead to dysfunctional systems. There are also systems where families and parents, not necessarily because there is any form of emotional abuse, but because they are not present for the kids. In things, parenting styles like the permissive parenting style, the neglecting parenting style. So they are not available, they are not there for the kids. They allow the kids to do anything they want to do without putting structure for them. That is also a problem. And then, of course, the authoritarians, the ones that say, this is how my daddy did it. When we were younger, nobody dare says anything when my dad is around, so everybody must keep quiet when I come in. You're not giving those kids the opportunity to develop their self-esteem and be able to express themselves in the larger society, and that could also predispose them to mental health concerns as well.
Is that a product of how the families came to be? Because Alera and I were talking this morning about a thing or two, and the topic of blended family came up. And so maybe you want to help us identify if there are different kinds of families and what make them up.
Well, so yes, there are different types of families, and I, from a mental health perspective, I would like to focus more on parenting. I like to focus on the parenting styles, and of course the support, social support that is available to the families. Of course, I was speaking to someone earlier that the African and Asian setup for families is more of a communal nature, where we support each other. Yeah. We come together, and the idea of from 18 years your independence is not an African thing, because those days where you, even when you are 18 or when you become an adult, you get a small portion in your father's compound and build something there, because you're supposed to get support, right? So when I look at families in that system, I look at families in the sense that there are some families that don't have that kind of support for each other. There are families like the extended families where you have a lot of people come around that can provide some support. But of course, in cases where the parents are not involved, it could also predispose kids to some bit of abuse as well, and we've seen that in our line of work as well. So yes, this structure, the makeup of the family, systems where parents are very busy, and that's what you see right now, not available for the kids, that's a significant problem as well.
And Chris, you know that in the early days, it wasn't just a family that brought up a child, it was the community.
Exactly.
How did that affect the mental health of the children, as opposed to now, when everybody is so insular? It's just me and my children.
And fenced off.
Yes.
Yeah. So in 2017, and that for us is when we started noticing increased mental health concerns in Africa and Nigeria, we tried to do a mini study, a pilot study to find out why. And one of the things we found out was the lack of social support was a significant trigger to the increased mental health concerns we're experiencing. So when you think about it from this perspective, it makes sense. It makes sense because when you had everyone together, there was social support.
And everyone involved.
Exactly, in supporting the child, in providing for the child, not just financially, but emotionally. You have an issue, you talk to one uncle or auntie, and they might not give you money. They don't have to give you money, but there's somebody to listen to you, which is different from what is happening right now. Now, what we see right now is that we see peers raising kids. So you go to school, and your friends are the ones raising you or telling you how things should be done or what, and they are also trying to figure out life.
Yeah, sure.
That's a significant challenge right there. So to begin to bring this home, we're talking about the mental health of families. For me, one of the major significant consideration or challenge here is how it affects society. Because we say that families are the nucleus of the society. So what do we need to pay attention to, especially within families now that, as Alera said, we have become a lot more insular, particularly in urban Nigeria?
Well, I like this point that you've raised, because I say that, just like you have said, that families determine what the society would be, what the nation would be, and there are many examples. Look at Japan, for example. You see model society in some way, and that's because it comes down to the family. So some of the things that I think that families need to start looking out for is, number one, being present, especially from the parents. Parents play majority of this responsibility now that we are more individualistic, right? So you might not be able to get all the external support that we used to get before, but as parents, you want to be able to be present for the kids.
On that, Mr. Boje, the parents themselves, we've had conversations here, Alera and I, that we discovered that some of today's parents need parenting themselves.
Sure.
So incidentally, the parents are the captains of the ship of the family. They themselves need parenting.
How do you marry that, right? So in my work, one of the things I say to some of my clients is that I would say to them, you need to be your own parents. right? So such that all the things you felt were not present growing up, you need to start intentionally parenting yourself that way, right? So that is something we need to establish, is that parents must take responsibility of themselves, right? A lot of parents might say, oh, but they didn't train us this way. This is not what we know. This, But yes, we agree. We're not blaming you for it, but we're saying take responsibility. Why? Because you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the kids as well. So I recognize that, but I say to parents, you need to take responsibility. The good thing is that, and I always use the word growth and progress, is that life and we are not fixed, which means that if there's something wrong, you can always work on it. Now, this is also where I talk about vulnerability and transparency. There's nothing wrong with me being open enough to tell my kids that, you know what, I'm not there yet. I have some issues that I'm also dealing with. And this is what I'm doing to manage them. I think that plays a significant role.
On that one,
Okay.
it's good though.
Talking to the children again.
Yes. On that one,
listening to them.
Going back to talking about the parents needing parenting. Just imagine a parent who is vulnerable. Dealing with insecurity, going to the child and saying, I am vulnerable. Let me go to the street. Which eye?
The child will take
looking, Papa.
So I get that. I get that's the fear that most parents have. And I think that the fear is misdirected. And let me explain it this way. The problem is not in you being vulnerable with the child and saying, this is what I'm also dealing with. It's you actually intentionally dealing with it, right? That's the problem. The problem is that I can say, oh, I'm dealing with this, but I'm doing nothing about it. Children observe what you're doing. And you'll be giving them a gift if you are struggling with something and you're showing them the process. I say to people that the biggest gift any parent can give the child is not all the money, is not anything. It's helping the child understand that if at any point in your life you're stuck, you can always do something about it. And the only way you can do that is if you show them your own journey for growth or healing.
You also know that generally, well, I'm not talking about children, I mean the little ones. Generally, youths and teenagers especially, well, she's a mother of mothers, so she'll be able to tell you, don't listen to parents, or rather, don't like to listen to their parents. Like, you people are old school. Your time has passed. We know what is happening today. You don't. How do we manage that? This whole thing is about helping the young people and the family to stay sane.
Well, so parenting, there is no one style to parenting throughout the years of the child, right? So we say that with toddlers, with children, there's a different style. They have a lot of questions and they want you to educate them. So they come and say, Mommy, this. They're always talking. They want you to educate them, right? And parents sometimes get frustrated with this, but you need to actually answer all their questions. You need to give them as much information as possible because that's what they need at that point. When they cross over to 12, which is the teenage, adolescent years, the style changes. Now, the best way to parent them is the use of questions, so the role reverses. Right? Now, but what many parents do is that they keep on still telling you and providing you information and telling you all that. The child is saying, no, that's not what I want right now. Why? Because that stage, we call it in psychology, we call that the identity formation stage. It's the stage where they're asking the question, who am I? So there's a lot of questions. Who am I? What am I good at? So the child has questions. Your job is to direct them to answers because that stage also is a lot of emotional development is happening at that point. So the child is trying to figure out what's happening. What do I like? Am I good enough and all that? So what you do is that you guide them by asking questions. Have you thought about it this way? What if you think about it this way and allow them to go do the thinking, allow them to come back with you to you with response, and then you can look at it and say, well done. But I think, what if we try it this other way? That is how you parent teenagers. But that's not what most parents are doing. And that's why you will see resistance because you're trying to give them the information. They say, no, that's not what I want.
So there is resistance against resistance. Hello, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, I remember something that was featured, was on the cover of Time magazine many years ago, and it was a photo of a group of young people, and it was captioned, we are the people our parents warned us against. Please, I want you to talk to that.
Well, so that takes me back to when I talked about parents just giving information and not allowing you to develop, answers yourself. What I see with many teenagers is that when parents are trying to give information, they also give one-sided information. Let's talk about substance use, for example. No parent will tell you how there are some positives to taking some substance. You probably will feel high, confident. They don't tell you all that. They tell you only the bad side of it. And you will die. You will run mad if you try this thing. So the child takes that information, goes to school. The friend peer says, see, don't mind mommy. Try this thing first. Okay, if you just try it and see if. And then the child tries it and realizes that, wow, I
didn't die.
I didn't die. I have so much courage. I have so much, confidence. So what was mommy saying?
Mommy is a liar.
Thank you. And then when they get back home, they say, see, you don't understand. Mommy, you don't understand. Why? Because what you told me is not what I found out. Many teenage girls also have that experience. If you touch a boy like this,
go get belly straight.
Exactly.
In fact, it was so bad in our time that we stayed away from our brothers.
Exactly.
We ran away from them. We didn't allow them to touch us.
You bumble.
How can parents behave like that?
Do you get it? Now, it's the fear. They have the best intentions. I need to say this out, that most parents have the best intentions.
But they shouldn't say things like that to their children.
It's the approach. And that's why we're having a conversation like this, so that many parents can change the approach. You are afraid. We get it. Deal with your fear, right?
How about also the fear of parents that once the children taste certain things that you talked about, they could get hooked and it could destroy them?
So the likelihood that a child would, let's talk about substance, for example. There's usually the experimentation stage of substance, but we find out that not everybody who experiments end up using substance, right? There's a reason why, right? Now, many people who end up using substance is because the substance does something for them that they couldn't get. So self-esteem, for example, your environment, your parent, your family should help you build that. And if they don't, substance would provide an idea that you have that, but we know it's not doing that for you. So that's the challenge. The challenge is that parents are not looking at it holistically. The intention is good. The approach needs to be modified with many kids. The approach needs to be modified.
Because I've spoken with a person or two who say that even those who are clergymen and clergywomen have children who are at risk of substance abuse, some of them in rehab and all those things. What happened in that kind of situation?
Well, your title doesn't make a difference.
Your child is your child.
Your child is a child.
Who's a teenager?
I'm talking about the fact that they go to church, they go to any religious house, and they do these things with the hope that the children will turn out well.
Unfortunately, parenting is parenting. And most religious settings follow the same, they're run by parents, right? so they follow the same strategy. Give you the information and hope that if you have all the information, you wouldn't do anything wrong, right? But we know that's not how it works. And I say to people, I have faith myself. And I say to people that even dealing with God, you need to learn to question. Ask questions. God is not going to push you away. And so clergy parents need to understand that as well. That when you deal with your kids, you need to understand that there is a stage. They are in a particular stage. And it has nothing to do with Nigeria or Africa or religion.
And they will ask questions.
They would ask questions. They would need to be guided and not to just be told, do this or do that. You know what your intentions are. Your job is to guide them towards that intention by providing double-sided information when necessary, but mostly guiding them to figure out answers themselves. So you're guiding them. That's what you're doing. That's what your job as parents, your job as a parent is to guide them to develop cognitively. And then when you get to that point where they've been able to answer many questions for themselves, you are confident that, you know what, this child is going to do well, regardless of what life throws at them.
But Chris, how is it that this issue of mental health is appearing more and more in our conversations.
Yeah. Also, so there are two sides to this. Many people think that this generation, mostly Gen Zs, are hiding behind the mask of mental health most times. They say, oh, my mental health is threatened and all that. And I say to people that it's their mental health. So they have a right to tell you whether it's affected or not, or whether they need, it's their
you have to agree.
Exactly, However, the reason why this conversation is coming up is linked to what I said earlier in 2017, the social isolation. We are more isolated, even though we are more connected now. So we're on social media.
More isolated, even though we're more connected.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have 30,000 friends on social media. But are you really, are those really your friends? And so when you log out of Instagram, you realize that you don't have anybody. And that's where the problem is. We are social beings. We are not designed to do life alone. And so we need to do life with people who are genuinely dear for us. And that's a major problem. Now, the other thing is, again, with the awareness, the increased awareness of mental health, people are more in tune now with their emotions. But we've not gotten to a point where they have a balanced knowledge, where they know that I can feel sad, I can feel anxious, I can feel angry, but doesn't mean that I have a mental illness. And so it is that stage where they're trying to still navigate the information that they have. And this is where I think parents should step in, because as a parent, you need to be able to share with your kids that it's okay to go through difficult times. It's part of life. It's okay to experience sadness from time to time. It's okay to be angry. One of the things I do with my toddler is that we play this game where we say, show me an angry face, and he says, an angry face, an angry face. It's our way of trying to say, these emotions are there and they are normal. It's okay to tell me, Daddy, I'm angry. And I'm not going to say, how dare you be angry?
And I joke about that because I read something in the Bible that says that parents should not provoke their children.
Yes.
So I just imagine, one guy could say, Daddy, you are provoking me.
I mean, you pack your load and leave the house.
My dear, you can't do that. It's 2023.
So many questions to ask you, Mr. Aboje. Maybe it has to be another question. For instance, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, first of all, how do people get to the children, young people get to the point of wanting to go commit suicide when they came from families? Another one is, what's the role of schools, in all of these conversations about, this whole mental health thing? Because it seems like, as a friend of mine is coming up with an initiative that sees teachers as foster parents of sorts, sure, given that they spend more time in school than with their parents, who, as you say, are very busy. But maybe some other time we'll take that on. Chris Aboje, clinical psychologist and wellness coach. You have to add that one to your title. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.
Hope your mental health is better now, having listened to that. And please, no more cane on those kids. Have a conversation with them. We'll be right back after now.